Hello, and welcome back to the boring hour you're home for long. Sleepy voyages into the quiet folds of history.
Tonight, I invite you to travel with me through the grey fog of 19th century London.
But we won't be riding carriages through polished avenues or attending royal balls.
No, we'll be descending gently into the forgotten alleys and narrow tenements of Victorian slums. We'll walk past rows of crumbling brick houses stacked too tightly to breathe.
Past rickety staircases slick with soot, and courtyards that smell of boiled cabbage, sewage, and smoke. This was a world that throbbed with noise and labour.
But it was also a world where millions lived, struggled, and endured day after day in the endless churn of the industrial age. In the first part of tonight's journey, we'll step inside the soot-blackened life of a child chimney sweep. You'll wake up in the dark, covered in ash, and climb into tight shafts not wide enough to turn around in.
You'll scratch your skin on bricks, cough blood, and try not to fall asleep inside a flue, lest you never wake again. But Victorian history isn't just about suffering. In our second chapter, we'll follow the story of the Great Stink of 1858, an event so foul, so unbearably stench-filled, that it forced the hand of Parliament to do something unheard of: confront public sanitation.
It's a tale of heat, filth, and slow-moving rivers of waste beneath the crown of empire.
Then we'll wander into the British Museum, not through the main doors with tourists, but through locked passageways and hushed galleries no one speaks about.
We'll explore the secret rooms, looted antiquities, and whispers of cursed mummies in the cold vaults of the empire's attic. And finally, we'll dine very quietly at a noble table.
Not as a guest, of course, but watching from the corner, observing the rituals, etiquette, and quiet power games of the Victorian aristocracy,
where forks must be held just so. Conversation must glide like silk, and the wrong choice of word or wine can be social suicide. All of it stitched together slowly, like an old code passed through generations. As the night deepens and your breathing slows, let the cold smoke of history wrap around you, not to choke, but to comfort.
Let the silence of forgotten lives lull you. You are not rushing anywhere tonight. You are simply here with me and with them. Welcome
to the slums.
Let's begin. You wake before the sun.
Not because you want to, but because the sharp end of a broom handle cracks against the thin crate that serves as your bed.
The rough shout of your masterpiece is the chill. It's not a gentle call.
There's no such thing here. You've been asleep on a bed of ash and splintered wood, bundled in what was once a potato sack, and your fingers are already stiff with cold. The frost that forms on the inside of the windows isn't from ice, it's from the thick smog that clings to every surface in this part of the city.
You're small, maybe 7 or 8.
You don't know for sure. You don't remember being born. You don't remember anything before soot and dark.
But you're the right size to fit into a flue.
Small enough to be pushed through chimneys built for smoke, not people.
And so, you are useful.
You sit up and blink the soot from your eyes.
Your skin is stained black, not just from yesterday's work, but from the day before, and the day before that. Soot seeps into your pores, beneath your fingernails, into the cracks at your heels. You can wash, but it never really comes off.
It becomes part of you, just like the constant cough that's begun to rattle in your chest. There's no breakfast waiting for you.
Maybe a crust of bread, if the master's in a good mood.
More often, it's just a half mark of watered-down tea that tastes of iron.
If you're lucky, it's warm.
Most mornings, it isn't.
You grip the cup between shaking hands, slurp down what you can, and tug on the same ragged shirt and trousers you wore yesterday. They stink of ash, sweat, and fire. Your master straps a soot bag to your back and fastens a length of rope around your waist.
To brush your tool, your burden is tied against your spine.
He doesn't say much. He doesn't need to. You know your job.
You know the punishment for failing.
The streets are still dark as you step outside.
A cold drizzle makes the cobblestones slick and treacherous.
Horse dung lies in thick puddles along the curb.
You walk barefoot.
You always walk barefoot.
Boots would only slow you down, and they cost too much.
You learn to dodge glass and thorns. You learn where to step.
You head toward Mayfair first.
That's where the finest houses are and the tallest chimneys. Houses with servants and drawing rooms and ladies who will never see your face. Houses where fires must always burn, and soot must always be swept lest smoke blacken the wallpaper or ash fall into their tea. The housekeeper greets your master without looking at you.
She lifts a gloved hand and motions toward the kitchen door. There's no need to speak.
Everyone understands the arrangement.
You're here to clean the flue, and you're to do it quickly.
No soot must fall. No furniture must be smudged. You're to leave no trace. Inside the scullery, the master unties the bag and nods toward the fireplace.
It's cold now.
but you know it's been used just hours before. The inside will still be warm, and the bricks coated in sticky black tar.
You kneel, cough once, and tie a rag around your mouth. It doesn't help. You know it won't help.
But it makes it look like you're trying.
Then you crawl inside. It's narrow.
Always narrower than you remember. The walls press in on your shoulders. You use your elbows and knees to push yourself upward.
You know every movement by heart. How to brace your feet against the brick. How to arch your back to avoid the jagged flue tiles. How to angle the brush just so to scrape the tar without jamming it.
Soot falls around you.
It clings to your lashes. It gets in your mouth.
You try not to breathe too deeply.
You've heard the stories of boys who fell asleep mid-climb and never came out.
Some suffocated, some burned, others just got stuck, like a cork in a bottle.
You reach a bend in the shaft.
It's tight. You wiggle through, biting your lip to stifle the pain as the bricks scrape the skin from your elbows.
Your left foot slips for a moment and your stomach flips, but you catch yourself. Dig in and push upward again.
Another to feet, another turn. At the top, the air shifts.
A faint draft brushes your cheek.
You reach the cap and twist the brush to clear the final build-up. You stay there for a second, just breathing what little air you can get.
Then the descent. It's worse going down. The soot that didn't fall the first time now rains in your face. Your back is half full already, heavy on your back.
You slide carefully, using your knees to steady your fall. Your trousers tear again at the seam.
You don't care.
Back in the kitchen, your master waits with the brush handle still in hand.
You collapse onto the floor and start coughing. Black phlegm hits the stone.
The housekeeper winces but doesn't say a word.
You gather the soot into a pile and funnel it into the bag.
Soot is valuable.
It's sold to farmers.
It fertilizes crops. Every handful has worth, just not to you.
By midday, you've done 3 houses. One had a dog that barked the entire time. Another had a cook who screamed when she saw you crawl out of the hearth.
Like a demon, she said. You're used to it. You're not supposed to be here.
Not in their world. You're the grease in the gears, the invisible child that keeps the fires burning and the rooms clean.
Your body aches. Your joints crack. You're constantly hungry.
You get scraps, if anything at all.
You've learned to steal crumbs when no one's watching. Not out of greed, but out of desperation.
Sometimes you bleed. Sometimes you cry.
But never in front of the master. Never where he can see.
At night, you return to the same crate.
You curl into yourself like a snail in its shell. Your skin itches.
The sores under your arms haven't healed. You scratch them until they bleed. You're one of thousands. There are boys and some girls all over the city doing exactly what you do. Some are even smaller. Some haven't survived the year.
Their names never made it to paper.
The master drinks by the fire.
You listen to the clink of his bottle.
You hear him snore as the fire dies.
You watch the shadows flicker on the soot-stained walls.
And you wonder, how many more days? How many more chimneys? But you don't think too long. Thinking hurts. Eventually, your eyes close, and your last thought is ash.
It began with a stench. Not a passing odor. Not a whiff of unpleasantness. But a smell so thick, so all-consuming, that it seemed to crawl up the Thames and settle over the lungs of every man, woman and child in London. In the summer of 1858, the mighty River Thames pride of the Empire transformed into an open sewer, and it did not go quietly.
Imagine, if you will, the heart of London. Parliament perched along the riverbanks, bustling docks crammed with ships, grand terraces overlooking the water. Now imagine all of it drowned in the reek of raw human waste.
This was not metaphor. This was not exaggeration. This was the great stink, and it very nearly brought the capital of the British Empire to its knees. But to understand that summer, we must step back. The Industrial Revolution had done more than pour smoke into the sky. It had poured people into cities.
London, in the early 1800s, swelled like a balloon tied to tight.
By mid-century, the population had soared to over 2 million souls, packed into narrow streets and even narrower dwellings.
The infrastructure, however, remained medieval.
Most homes had no running water,
no sewage system.
Waste, human and animal alike, was dumped into cesspools, into drains, into alleyways, and ultimately into the Thames. The river, long revered as a source of commerce and poetry, had become a liquid graveyard of brown, sluggish flow of urine, feces, animal carcasses, industrial runoff, and slaughterhouse refuse. For decades, the problem had been tolerated, hidden, denied. Politicians debated, citizens protested, but nothing truly changed. Until the heat came.
The summer of 1858 was unusually dry and cruelly hot. Temperatures soared.
The river slowed.
The tides receded just enough to expose the rot,
and rot it did with an intensity that coated the city like a plague.
Newspapers described it as a smell that assailed the nostrils and poisoned the very air. One writer claimed it was like a giant foul lung exhaling sickness over the land. Curtains were soaked in carbolic acid. Lime was scattered across riverbanks in desperation. Parliament itself hung sheets soaked in chloride of lime over the windows to keep the odor out, but it seeped through anyway. Politicians cacked at their desks. Lawyers fled their chambers.
Boats were abandoned mid-river. Even the Queen, Victoria herself, cancelled a pleasure cruise due to the unbearable smell. The river had become undeniable, but the Great Stink was not just an assault on the senses.
It was a crisis of public health.
For years, outbreaks of cholera had devastated London.
Tens of thousands had died, especially in poor districts where water and waste shared the same path.
At the time, the prevailing belief was in the theory of miasma, that disease spread through bad smells and foul air through suspected water contamination. Dr. John Snow, in the years before the Great Stink, had traced a cholera outbreak to a single contaminated water pump on Broad Street.
His theory that cholera was waterborne was radical, even ridiculed.
The establishment clung to miasma like a gospel, but the Stink changed minds.
Or at least, forced hands.
It was not morality or reason that finally moved Parliament, it was the smell in their noses.
In July of 1858, a bill was rushed through both houses with rare speed and urgency. It granted powers to an engineer named Joseph Bazalgette, a quiet, meticulous man with a grand vision. His task, to cleanse the Thames.
Bazalgette began what would become one of the greatest civil engineering projects of the Victorian era, the construction of London's modern sewer system. Over 1,100 miles of underground sewers were designed to collect waste and divert it far from the heart of the city, discharging it downstream where it would be less dangerous. The system required not only new tunnels, but embankments raising the banks of the Thames and incorporating pumping stations, bridges, and sluices. It was a project of monumental scale, and it saved thousands of lives. But the stink did not vanish overnight.
Throughout that summer, Londoners wore vinegar-soaked scarves and clutched pomanders.
Doctors handed out salt tablets and whispered prayers. The river remained a reeking ribbon through the heart of the capital.
One account tells of a gentleman attempting to dine by the river, only to collapse vomiting into his soup.
Another of a carriage horse rearing in panic as it neared the embankment. The city held its breath literally. But eventually, slowly, change came.
By the early 1860s, as Bazalgette's tunnels came online, the waste began to vanish beneath the streets.
The river, once brown and teeming with rot, began to shimmer faintly again.
It would never be pure, but it no longer killed quite so easily.
The Great Stink was over, and yet
It lingered.
in memory, in legend, in policy,
It marked the moment when denial collapsed under the weight of its own decay.
when empire, with all its wealth and science, was forced to confront the filth at its core.
Today, we walk along the Thames and see tourists, bridges, cafes, but beneath our feet, Bazalgette's tunnels still run.
And in summer, if the air is still and the tide low, some say you can still smell it. You enter through the grand doors past the Roman columns and marble floors, under the vast rotunda where whispers echo and camera flashes flicker like distant storms.
Tourists shuffle past one another, maps unfolded, eyes wide with wonder.
But you are not here for the displays, not the Rosetta Stone,
Not the Parthenon marbles.
not the gift shop.
You are here for the rooms behind the doors, the ones without numbers, the ones that let downward, not up. Because the British Museum is more than what it shows. It is a building of secrets, a memory vault of imperial conquest.
An attic of empire.
Behind every labeled artifact is a story, often broken, sometimes violent, occasionally whispered.
And beneath the gentle hush of gallery halls lies something uneasy. The story begins in 1753 with a man named Sir Hans Sloane.
Sloane was a physician, naturalist, and obsessive collector. When he died, he left behind 71,000 items, coins, books, dried plants, animal parts, antiquities gathered from across the world. Parliament bought his collection, and the British Museum was born.
But soon the mission shifted. What began as a cabinet of curiosities became a monument to acquisition. As the British Empire expanded, so too did its appetite for relics, not just for trade, not just for study,
But for ownership,
display. Artifacts were taken from temples, tombs, ruins, shrines, and palaces.
sometimes purchased, often not.
Soldiers took them, governors ordered them.
Explorers shipped them home.
The British Museum became not just a gallery, but a repository of spoils. One of the most famous is the Elgin marbles carved panels from the Parthenon in Athens.
Removed in the early 1800s by Lord Elgin under what many historians call a questionable Ottoman permit, they were shipped to London in crates and mounted in silent halls.
Today, Greece demands their return. The museum resists.
Visitors walk past, unaware of the quiet war of words unfolding in international courts and newspaper columns.
And then, there are the mummies. The British Museum is home to one of the largest collections of ancient Egyptian artifacts outside of Egypt.
In the 19th century, mummies became a craze in Britain. They were bought at auction, dissected in parlors, even unwrapped at parties in a grotesque display of scientific showmanship and colonial spectacle.
The museum acquired dozens. Some came through excavation,
Others through private dealers, but few came with full consent.
There are tales of curses, whispered among night staff of lights that flicker near the sarcophagi, of footsteps in the closed Egyptian wing after midnight. A curator once claimed to have heard breathing behind glass. Another said an exhibit had shifted position overnight.
But beyond the myths lies a colder truth. The bodies were taken. Many of these mummies were priests, nobles, or ordinary people whose tombs were broken open not by tomb robbers, but by imperial scholars.
Their resting places looted in the name of progress, their names forgotten,
their faces shown to millions.
Some rest still in the vaults, never displayed.
Too fragile, too fragmented, or perhaps too controversial.
Beneath the galleries lies the Department of Archives and Storage, an unglamorous name for something much more complex.
Here lie the objects not on display.
Not just duplicates or damaged pieces, but thousands of items that haven't seen the light of day in decades. A museum beneath the museum. Few are allowed in. The catalogue is immense, millions of items, many undocumented. When staff or researchers descend the concrete staircases, they often describe the feeling as entering a crypt. The air is dry, the lighting minimal.
Some artifacts are packed in foam, others lie on trays.
There are tablets that predate language, coins minted before Julius Caesar was born,
baskets from lost tribes, a feathered headdress from the Amazon, believed to be one of only 3 in existence. One room contains nothing but locks of hair ritual, ceremonial and otherwise. Another holds stone fragments carved with ancient scripts no one has translated. Another,
severed hands from a forgotten excavation in North Africa. The tags long faded. No public tours are offered.
Security is tight, but not always successful.
In 2023, a quiet scandal broke. Thousands of objects had been stolen over the years, piece by piece, some sold online. The museum admitted the loss only after pressure. A senior curator was quietly dismissed. Investigations followed, but the full scale of what's missing,
still unknown. The attic of empire had cracks. And then there is the question no one wants to ask too loudly. Should it all be returned?
The British Museum holds artifacts from over 250 countries, many of which were under British colonial control.
Critics argue the museum is built on plunder, a warehouse of stolen memories. Supporters counter that the museum preserves, protects, and educates. It is a debate of law, ethics, and legacy.
From the Benin bronzes looted during a punitive expedition in 1897 to the MOI heads once traded as curiosities to sacred Aboriginal items, the list of contested items grows yearly.
Some pieces have been returned.
Others await negotiation.
Still others sit in their cases, surrounded by quiet. As you walk these halls alone at night, perhaps in your mind, you might begin to feel something. A weight.
Not from the glass or marble, but from history itself.
From the choices made, the silences held, the voices that cannot speak for themselves, because every artifact here was once held by a living hand, buried by ritual, blessed by tradition,
taken by force, or carried away in desperation. And now,
it is here, catalogued, cleaned,
framed in light, but never truly at home.
The fire crackles softly behind you. The velvet curtains are drawn against the dusk, and candles have been lit, dozens of them casting warm pools of golden light. Across polished mahogany, silver cutlery, and fragile crystal stemware, you are in a dining room of the English aristocracy, mid-Victorian era. Somewhere outside, horses nigger in the frost, the stable boys are finishing their evening rounds. But in here, time is suspended. The first course is moments away. Your gloves are off. Your napkin is in your lap. Your back is straight. You are seated to places down from the host close enough to be visible, but not close enough to speak without invitation. To eat here is not simply to be fed. It is to participate in a performance of class. Every glance, every utensil, every sip is part of the show. The meal begins with soup. Clear broth, not too hot, served in porcelain shallow bowls. You hold your spoon away from yourself. Scoop delicately and never slurp. The rule is simple. One should hear the conversation, never the soup. The room is quiet. No one speaks loudly. Voices are modulated. Laughter is polite. The table is long over 30 feet. At either end, the host and hostess maintain their kingdoms, exchanging knowing looks and subtle nods. Between them are arranged the guests, lords, ladies, bishops, baronets, officers on leave, eligible daughters, and perhaps, if fashionable, a foreign dignitary. Each person at this table has a title, a lineage, an expectation placed upon their shoulders from birth. The servants glide around the perimeter like ghosts. Their shoes make no sound. They refill glasses and remove empty plates with military precision. You are not to acknowledge them. You are not to speak to them unless absolutely necessary. They are here but not here. Part of the furniture, part of the ritual. The second course arrives, fish lightly poached. A different fork is used now. One must always use the proper utensil. Using the wrong fork is like wearing one's undergarments outside one's dress. An unforgivable social sin. At the table, no one asks for salt or pepper. The dishes have been perfected by the chef, a Frenchman, most likely, hired at great cost. To question the seasoning is to question the household. The hostess might not recover from the slight. Conversation flows in controlled currents. The topics are safe. The weather in Bath. The state of the roses this season, the Queen's latest appearance at the opera. Politics may arise, but only with the firmest of boundaries. Religion is touched only through the lens of charity. Money is never discussed. To bring up one's own business or worse, one's salary is to immediately mark oneself as middle class. The aristocracy does not work. It owns. It inherits. Its wealth is generational and ideally invisible. The third course, game, pigeon perhaps, or venison if the season permits. The plates arrive steaming. Gravy pools like polished lacquer. This is the heart of the meal. Servants ensure wine glasses remain filled with claret deep red, aged, and imported at great expense. Now the conversation can deepen, but only slightly. Gentle flirtation is permitted between young guests. Widows may mention novels. Older gentlemen might lean into reminiscence, especially about India or the Crimea, but always the tone is light, witty, controlled. To express too much emotion is considered vulgar. The ladies are the first to withdraw. When the hostess gently rises, the women at the table do the same. They file out of the room in a rustle of silk and lace, each hand resting on a gloved forearm of the gentleman beside her. They will retire to the drawing room to sip tea and discuss safe subjects, needlework, fashions from Paris, the state of someone's niece. Back in the dining room, the men loosen slightly. Port is brought out. Cigars, sometimes. The servants close the heavy doors. This is the only time in the evening when the masks may slip just a bit. Here, conversation can turn toward politics, the press, even scandal, though always at a careful distance. Names are never mentioned. Affairs are alluded to in metaphors. A raised eyebrow, a curled smile. The older men may boast of past hunts, of parliamentary speeches, of old club rivalries. The younger men listen, absorbing the cadence of power. Because here, everything is about learning the code. These dinners were not spontaneous. They were choreographed down to the second. Guests were placed not at random, but according to complex hierarchies of rank, favor, and marital status. The host's secretary might spend days arranging the seating chart alone. Even the menu was a signal. A dinner that began with turtle soup and ended with blanc mange sent a different message than one that opened with oxtail and finished with spotted dick. But beneath the cutlery, the conversation, and the crystal, there lies a deeper function. Control. These dinners were how power moved in Victorian England, not through the shouting of crowds, but through soft tones and porcelain plates. A nod here meant funding. A laugh there meant scandal was avoided. A compliment to the right person's daughter could mean an alliance formed. All of it happened in silence beneath candlelight. You, as a guest, must never fidget, never talk too much, never appear eager. You must fold your napkin, not crumple it, and leave it neatly to the left when you rise. You must address the Viscount properly, even if he smells of old tobacco and forgets your name. You must never reveal hunger. This is not a place for appetites. It is a place for masks. At the end of the evening, the host stands. Everyone follows. There is no clapping, no cheering, no embrace. The guests thank the host with words carefully chosen. No praise to rich, no compliment to familiar. Just a nod, a murmur, a line from Pope or Milton if you're clever. Then the carriages arrive. You descend the marble steps beneath a gas lamp that flickers like a nervous eye. The horses are restless. A servant opens the door. The night wind cuts through your coat. And as you pull away, you realize you have just participated in a ritual older than it seems. You have dined not just with aristocrats, but with ghosts of a vanishing world. A world of appearances, of inheritance, of unspoken rules passed down like old silver. And as the street disappears behind you, you feel it the quiet relief of escape. Because for all its elegance, the world is exhausting.
London never truly slept.
Not in the 19th century. Beneath its cobblestone streets and polished drawing rooms, something was always moving.
A hand reaching for bread, a boot stepping in ash,
A rat scuttling past a cellar wall. The city breathed through pipes and soot, through muffled cries and distant bells.
and now, as your eyes grow heavy, let's walk once more slowly through what we've seen.
You began your journey as a chimney sweep, cradled in darkness and dust, a child of soot and silence. Every day, you climbed higher, yet saw no sky. You learned the shape of pain without language. You learned to move without sound, to breathe without rest.
You saw how the city used small bodies to clean its smoke, and how it forgot their names before their ashes cooled. Then, you stood along the reeking banks of the Thames, watching Parliament gag on its own decay.
You witnessed a river that no longer flowed, it festered, the waste of millions, churning in a slow, brown ribbon of shame. But from that stench rose change.
A system of tunnels,
Of pumps,
of salvation through engineering. The city was forced, at last, to confront its filth, and so it grew, not in beauty, but in infrastructure.
From there, you entered the still halls of the British Museum, not as a visitor, but as a ghost in the archive.
You wandered beneath the empire's attic among mummies, marbles, stolen gods, and tagged relics from every corner of conquest.
You felt the quiet of things taken.
The unease of objects never meant to rest here. You saw the price of curiosity, of collection, of imperial hunger masked as scholarship. And finally, you dined in silence with the aristocracy, dressed in borrowed silk and bound by rules older than logic.
You watched power pass like a wine glass never spilled, never openly claimed. You learned to eat without tasting, to speak without saying, to exist without offense. And as you left, you carried with you the weight of every bow, every glance, every unspoken agreement that held the social machine together.
All of this was one city.
And yet, each of these Londons barely saw the others. The child in the flue never heard the chamber music. The museum guard never met the boy floating face down in the Thames. The duke in the dining hall never looked into the eyes of the maid who pressed his trousers. This was not a single world, but a stack of lives, each balanced on the ones beneath. And now here, with the lights low and the day behind us, you can see it for what it truly was. Not a city of progress, or poverty, or empire, or etiquette,
But all of them, at once. A machine of coal, wealth, waste, and dreams.
grinding forward.
Smoke above.
Rats below, teacups at the top, ashes at the bottom. So rest now, let the fog settle,
Let the gas lamps dim.
let the streets grow still.
The boots have stopped clattering.
The plates have been cleared, the vault doors have been locked, the chimneys have called, and somewhere, far off, a bell rings midnight.
You have walked through Victorian London.
And now, you may sleep. Good night.